All right, guys, we're going to go ahead and jump in here, and I'm trying to find where I can put this darn window. We're going to do the next step on our tool shed. We're going to add trusses this week, and this is what it's going to look like when it's done. Pretty damn cool, I got to say. I'm really liking how this is coming out. It just looks like a pretty cool structure we're building. So let's jump in and take a look. Now, what we've got here is called a Fink truss. Okay, it looks like a Wonder Woman symbol now that I look at it. You get this big W basically right in the middle, and that takes the place of that king post you had just going down the center. Okay, so let's go ahead and get building on this and show you how to do it. So let's take away all those, and there's another view. That's just the single one that we're going to make all the copies of. That's what we're going to build, is that single Fink truss. So I'm just going to get rid of that one. We'll start from scratch. So first off, you want your tool shed all there, and you really, if you wanted to simplify things, all you need is your ceiling joists. You could even take off all the rest of it with your tags and turn it off. I'll leave the rest there, but we're just going to build right on top of these ceiling joists you have. Okay, now the slope part of the assignment, I'm going to add that piece. So these are the dimensions that are there when the truss is still there. It's called a Fink truss, and the slope we're designing to this week is a 1:2, or a 1/2 slope. Okay, fractionally 1/2, or you could write it as a ratio 1:2. That means the rise, the first number, the 1 is the rise, the distance up. That's this one right here, 5'8" and a 16th. That's 1:2. In other words, that amount for that rise is doubled. It's twice as much for the run. So the ratio is whatever the rise is, you're going to double it for the run. And the run is the horizontal, remember? And that's from the center point, because it's peaking right here, over to the edge. So if we looked at that, it's about 11'3". Now that may not exactly come out. I don't know why. My measurements, it may not have been exact, but roughly speaking, if you take 5'8" and double it, that's 10 feet. 8 and 8 is 16 more inches, so that's another 1'4". So it's 11'4" ish, and this is 11'3" plus a little. So I'm off by about an inch on my slope. So don't stress and drive yourself crazy trying to get the numbers to be exact on here. I may even have tried to get them exact, and they were just off a little bit based on how the 2x4s line up and the widths of the 2x4s being taken into account and such. So don't let that hang you up, but your goal is a slope of 1/2 or 1:2. So you should have whatever's here, you should have about double that here. And if you've built everything to my dimensions, it'll probably come out exactly like mine, or maybe darn close. Again, maybe my measurement was off somewhere or something. Let's dive in and do this. Okay, I'm starting with just a rectangle right on this edge here. You could also use the rectangle tool, but it was a little funky for me before, so I'm just going to use the line tool. Okay, so I'm over, and I'm just going to go up 3.5, and then over. Sorry, guys. I'm evidently still learning my tools. Gives me a little snap to Y. There we go. Okay, so there's our face of our 2x4. I'm going to turn off all those dimensions because they're going to get in the way. We'll create our own as we go. Okay, so there's a 2x4. Now from there, we're going to just put up our triangular. And by the way, this is going to be built as a king post initially. It's much easier just to throw that center line, or maybe, we'll see. This is the second time I'm building it. Maybe you don't need to put the king post in there, but starting with a measurement and a line right at the center seems like the easiest way to go. So we're going to do that. And let's start with figuring out how high that should go. So we want to know, if I'm going to do a slope of 1/2, that's what I need right now. If I'm going to figure out how high this is going to go to create this king post, the peak point here, how high is that going to be? So to do that, we've got to figure out what the length across on this is. So go ahead and measure that out and dimension that out real quick. So let's see what that is. You probably already have that dimension. It's on the wall you created initially, right? Now mine says 22 6.5. I think that is what the wall was initially created as. But depending on if your walls overlap or not, this one, it's a little funky because this side joist is sticking out over this side joist, but the actual wall comes out to the end here. So if this side is also wall right out to the end, then that 22 6.5 is the initial wall you started the shed with. But if you happen to measure down this side of it, if you happen to be facing that edge, this width of this wall and the other wall might be capping the end of that. So your wall might be 7 inches longer than mine. That's okay. Easy fixes. You're just going to use a calculator as we go, and you just change the numbers you plug in and dimension things to. It's not a big deal. So we have 22 6.5. Now remember, we want to know the half of that first off, because at this midpoint is only half of that distance. So we're just going to put that on the calculator. You should get a calculator out as well with me. What is 22 feet 6.5 inches just as inches? Go ahead and figure that out right now, and then tell me. Hopefully you said 270.5. Now remember, that's the whole distance, so we're going to divide that in half. Okay, half of 270 is 135. So at the midpoint, if we go to find the midpoint, I'm going to start a line here. There it is. When I start a line right there, that is 135 inches from the edge. So I don't want to make this line 135, okay? If we weren't, oops, I forgot I have to leave it there. If we go ahead and make a 135-inch line right now, notice what's going to happen. That line is as long as that distance. That's a 1-to-1 slope, because dividing it in half the first time just got you to create the right triangle distance. Remember, our right triangle that's rise and run is only going to be half of the length of the whole truss anyway, because the peak is in the middle. So that 135 is actually this distance we have here. We need to get half of that distance, that's the run, to figure out the rise piece, since this is only half as tall as this length. So now take your 135 and divide it in half again. Okay, you should get 67.625. And remember, if you've got your own calculator and your dimensions aren't exactly the same as mine, that's okay. You should just be, what is that line from? You should be just calculating along and have your own numbers, and that's fine. If you're slightly off, your wall might be that 7 inches longer. So we should have 67. Now it says 0.65. You can absolutely just put decimals right in. It works. But just as a side note for you guys, I believe 0.625 is 5/8. Just kind of memorize those when you start doing a lot of fraction work in the wood shop over time. And I believe that's 5/8. So there we go. Now if we step back and look, this is what you've got. You've got the length from the corner to the center, and that's about half the distance, should be exactly half the distance up for that height. So now we've got our truss height, we've got our slope of 1-2. So now we're just going to finish the triangle. Now this triangle, let's see, how did I do it the first time? It's going to be the peak, so you know what? I'm going to go to the top of this 2x4 right there. And who knows, I might be wrong, but I think that's the better way to go for what I'm thinking later. Put it there. So we've got the basics of our truss. Now, I guess whether or not you fill in the king post here may not matter, because we're going to delete that anyway, and we're going to fill in the W. We're going to have kind of a zigzag here. And I also did all 4 individual pieces of the Fink, each one at a time. And it may be better to just do 2 of them and then just flip and mirror that around to do the other half. So let's try that this time and see if we can save some time and energy. Now, where we're going to put that line where the W starts, and let's just look real quick at what the Fink looks like. It's right here. This is the one you're going to build. Get rid of that. So roughly speaking, we're going to say it's the midpoint. We're going to get the midpoint of this outside edge. And that's where we're going to start this. And then notice this is not really the midpoint of this section. I think it's about, what did I use? I don't remember what I used. I don't know. We'll figure it out. So let's start with the midpoint. Find the midpoint of that line on that edge. There it is. And so we know where that's at, but we really can't. Don't want to do that. We can't start that line yet until we figure out where it's going to go to. So let's figure that out now. Let's do a dimension of just the half we're working on. There we go. And let's do about right here. Oh, that's what I did. I did 3 feet. I just made a flat, simple measure. So go just do from the center line, do a 3-foot guide. And I thought that kept it easy and it makes it the same for everybody. Wow. That's terrible. Okay, but we see this vertical 3-foot guide here in the middle of all this other stuff that's created. Ignore all the crazy busyness for the rest of it. And so we'll go from right here. Now notice that's interesting because this, I think, is where I put my 3-foot mark last time. So that's probably how my slope was off. No idea what the difference is, but we're just going to move on. So start a point here, and then let's just find the midpoint. Oh, midpoint right there. Okay, I'm going to turn all these guys off because that's really confusing. All right, so there we go. That's the beginning of our W. It'll go here, and then it'll just go from here right up to here. Okay, there we go. Now I just remembered before we continue, we need to finish making the 2x4 on this outside edge. Okay, we've got the outline of the 2x4 on the bottom. We need it on this side as well. Remember, single lines are not finished pieces of our architecture. They're just the beginning of 2x4s. So let's finish that. And in order to do that, we need another guide, and that means turning guides back on, which frankly I'm loath to do at this point. So let's see if we can clean some of this up. This is ridiculous. Part of this is because I just did this and made all these guides to do these 5 minutes ago before the video. But right now, they're just getting in the way. All right, that's a little better. So it's a 2x4. Make sure we're going purple. That means we're perpendicular, and we need 3.5 because it's standing on end. So that allows us to finish this guy here. And you can draw overlapping lines right now. We'll erase what we need to connect the 2x4s later. There we go. Now we're going to do some more guides to finish that Fink inside W. And remember, since that's the center line of this, we're only, and I don't know why that guy's not coming up. We'll go the other direction. And remember, you need purple. That means it's perpendicular, and that's seemingly hard to find right now. I'm not sure why. There we go. Remember, that's the center line. So half of a 2x4, just like it was before, that's half of 3.5, just like the previous construction videos, is 1 3/4. So make your guides 1 3/4, and then if you go from a guide all the way across, then it'll be 3.5. And I'm not sure why it's not showing. What is wrong here? Let's try another one, see if we can get it to show up on the face. There we go. Except we want purple. There we go. So now you can finish drawing. Now you don't need to go on this section here because we know this is finished 2x4. We'll erase that line in a minute. We're just going inside the 2x4. And let me fix this as well. This is a dimension that's poorly placed. We'll get rid of him, make our life easier, and finish drawing our Fink. Okay, there we go. We're on our way. And I'm going to erase the inside of that because that's a 2x4, and then that edge there. And now it should be looking a little cleaner. We can see there's our outside 2x4. These here, we want the 2x4 that's on the top, making the diagonal, to be the one that runs through, because that way we can have an overhang later if we want to create eaves. So this is going to run through, and so we're going to erase that guy. So now that's solid on this side, okay? We can delete that. Kind of starts making things a bit clearer. Don't delete this side yet, because we got to draw the 2x4 around the middle of this center line. So let's go ahead and finish that. Make sure it's purple, and that's 1 3/4. And do it the other way. And I'm not sure why I did that. Okay, finish drawing your lines. There we go. And then these. I think I had it running with this one going through like that. So then we'll erase these, I think is how it should go. There you go. Connect this line at the bottom that looks like it needs to be connected. And there we go. We can delete that out. We're just about there. We can actually delete that one out too, because the whole center is going to go away in a minute anyway when we get rid of that line. So that's pretty much our truss. Now let's clean up this edge. We don't need this line. And there we go. That's looking pretty good. So now, I did not try this last time. Let's try this. Let's just see if we can mirror and flip this over. Now, we should complete this 2x4 before we do that. So go ahead and do one more guide. Remember, that's 3.5. It's a full truss. Now that we have that, let's just try and we're going to try and grab those two and make them a group. Now that they're a group, we might be able to move and rotate them. I don't know. If this doesn't work really easily, then we're going to have to just recreate them individually on the other side. So now that they're copied, get them over, and you know what? Hold on a sec. This would be cheating if we use those guides because you guys don't have those guides set up. So let's pretend those weren't there. Okay, so now we need to know where we're going to put those. So let's figure that out as if you had to do this from scratch, because you do. From here right to the edge, what's that? 2, 9, and 3/16. That's not a very good measurement. 3, 2. How about the outside edge? Yeah, those are not clean finished edges. I guess we could do, is that the 3 foot? How about this? That's not exact either. All right, I don't see a way to make this exact, and I do not want to fudge it. You'll be able to tell the way these angles meet. They just won't look quite right, and it just looks so good when it's clean and finished. So let's just do it for real. I'm going to go a little quicker on this half because I've already talked you through it. So there's my guide. So I'm just going to start right at the top, right down to the center there, and then from there to the midpoint. There it is. And then we're just going to draw 2x4s on those. idea where that guide went. Here's the third time trying to draw a guide. Waiting for it to be purple. There we go, but it's not showing up. Why are you doing this to me, you dumb program? I'm just going to assume that that's correct. It looks right. Oh, snap. I just realized something. Okay, here's where I lead you guys wrong sometimes. Notice that this is the outside edge of that 2x4 going right at the center, which means this line we just drew is the outside edge of the 2x4, not the center line. So this guide is unnecessary. Delete him. This line is off. Delete that. That guide is wrong. Delete that. And redraw the guide. That's the outside edge of the 2x4. So we need a 3.5 there as a guide. That's where our other line goes. That's going to be symmetrical. Okay, now let's take a look. Erase the center of this guy. I think that might have just made things a little off now that I think about it. Because that was the outside edge, which means the center line was slightly over. Yeah, it might be slightly off. Well, I don't feel like going back and redo it, guys. You probably don't either. I'm just going to move forward. This is the one that has the through, just like that. Okay, we can see how he's a little off. Dang, I'm going to have to fix that now. So this needs to run up here, and it needs to run not to the midpoint, but it needs to run slightly to the edge of the midpoint. So don't worry, I'm not going to leave you hanging, guys. We're going to figure this out. Is this the midpoint? Where's the midpoint? You got to use the line tool. Let's just delete that line because we don't want it. Midpoint, where are you? Okay, let's just erase that line too. We got to find the midpoint, move from there. Midpoint, there you are. So from the midpoint, we're going to go from the midpoint and we're going to go 1 3/4. And I can't see tags now. Yes, guides. Yes, I can. Okay, so let's see if we can find that midpoint and then the guide. Okay, so if that's the midpoint, there should be a guide just below it, even if we can't see it. And where it says on edge. Oh, for Pete's sake, this is driving me bonkers. All right, guys, I don't want to do this in a way that loses you. I want to do it in a way that you can track with me. So let's instead recreate that and just recreate that. Where's our midpoint? Boom, there we go. That's what we should have done in the first place. Now the guides will work. Okay, 1 3/4. Why is the damn guide disappearing? Thank you. Please stay there, guide. There we go. And now, what's this, the 6th time we do it? 6th time is the charm. There we go. Now it lines up. Goodness gracious. If nothing else, guys, this can be a lesson in perseverance. You just got to keep working and figure it out. Okay, yep, that looks good. Let's turn off the tags, make it look a lot cleaner. And I believe at this point, Get rid of all of that. And bam. Looks like we have a matching Fink truss with only one issue with that little line right there. Okay, so you want to look and make sure everything looks clean. Like this should be a solid 2x4 with no lines going up each side, right at the top meeting. And then right here, you've got a separate 2x4 going to the bottom. And then here you've got a separate 2x4 and that's mirrored on both sides. That looks great. So now rotate slightly to the angle side. And now you can just push pull all of those pieces out. Single tap. Now notice there's an example of what happened the other day. Notice how that face disappears. Option, and that restores that face. And then we just want 3/4. No, 1.5. 1.5 thickness. There you go. And you just got to do that to all of them. There's probably a quicker way. Someone please show me how to group a whole bunch of stuff at once and then do a push pull. I couldn't figure that out the other day. So I'm stuck doing these one by one, which seems really tedious. And I just remembered, at least once you start, you can just click an outside edge. That'll make it a little quicker. Oh, we grouped these guys. That's what happened. Ungroup them, explode them. And then they'll be separate. Oh, and if it does that, you got to notice before you jump it and finish it. Sorry, guys. Okay. Now, if we step back, I think. Don't worry about the different colors on the faces. We're going to texture it anyway. I think we're good. That thing looks pretty sharp. And if we throw, I'm curious if I throw up my other measurements, if they'll match. That was on a different actual. Oh, see, that's interesting. The previous one I measured, I must have been on a different end of the 2x4, top versus bottom or something. So we can see my original peaked up a bit higher. So these are slightly off. The one we just built was slightly different dimensions, but it's still going to be a 1:2. All right, and so that's that. And then from here, you guys know what to do. It's the exact same thing as the floor and ceiling trusses. Group it. Make sure the whole thing is highlighted and group it. Now, also, make it a component, okay? Call it roof truss. And then now just do your move copy. Okay, the first one may not be lined up, so the first time you do it, I would not just multiply by 16. The way that I make sure they line up is first I just line it up on that edge. And then once you single click and move it there, you can remove it directly along that dimension straight out to the edge. And something seems a little off here. Make sure that looks good. Oh, see, it's way off. Something was wrong there. But it'll snap to staying on the same dimension. Now that you have the first one done, now it's really easy. Just do a move, and if you've got everything centered on 16, there you go. And then times whatever more you need, and there you go. Easy, done and done. Oh, by the way, texture it before you do this, and then copy it, because I just forgot, and now you have to go back through and texture all of them. It takes a while longer. Okay, that's it, guys. Make sure you have those dimensions up here up front. It's a Fink truss. It's got a slope of 1:2, and you've got your height, and you've got your dimension of the halfway point, so I can see that you've got that correct slope there. Give me a screenshot where I can read stuff. So maybe a screenshot of the whole finished product, and then a screenshot where you tag and get rid of like all of the stuff except the front one. Like maybe you can give me a second screenshot like this, which makes it much easier to read. But don't delete your dimension like I just did. And make sure these are all easy to read. And there you go.